All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. Can we have a roll call, please?
Dustin Allred,
Here.
Will Andreessen, Andrew Fell,
Here.
Lou Hopkins,
Here.
Deborah McFarland,
Present.
Karen Sims, Chen Shi Yu.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we have a quorum. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
All right. Approval of the minutes from the October 20th, 2022 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any motions or comments on the minutes from this last meeting? Motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Anyone second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? If not, then we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Do we have any communications?
We've received no written communications on the case tonight. We did host a neighborhood meeting last week concerning the case. 12 people attended that meeting, and a summary of it is included in the staff report.
All right, thanks, Mr. Wilson. So we have no continued public hearings, no old business, which brings us to our new public hearing for this evening. Plan case number 2464M22, a request by the City of Urbana to rezone 1603 East Washington Street from B3 General Business to R5 Medium High Density Multifamily Residential. And we have a presentation.
We
Mr.
do.
Wilson, all right, take it away.
Hey, good evening, everyone. As you've just heard, the City of Urbana has requested to rezone the parcel at 1603 East Washington Street from its current zoning of B3 General Business to R5 Medium High Density Multiple Family Residential. This is following a proposal for an affordable housing development the city has received for the lot. Staff conducted outreach on this case via mailings to over 200 neighboring property owners, as well as placing a notice in the News Gazette, city social media, and a sign on the lot. We also held a neighborhood meeting last Thursday at Foursquare Church on Washington Street. 12 members of the public attended that meeting, and a summary of the discussion is in the staff report. Planning staff are recommending approval of this rezoning, finding that it meets the criteria. This is a location map of the property at the southeast corner of the intersection of Washington Street and Learman Avenue. It's just under 1 acre and is currently vacant following the dissolution of the nonprofit that had managed a community garden at the location until June of this year. The city acquired the property in 2012 with the intention of it serving as a site for affordable housing. The ordinance that authorized the purchase of the lot back then using CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funds from HUD, stipulated that it eventually be used for affordable housing. But pending a suitable development proposal and funding, the site was leased on a temporary basis to the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee for use as a garden. Prior to its use as a garden, the lot had primarily been vacant throughout its history. In the fall of this year, the city received a proposal for an approximately 40-unit affordable housing development, which would be on both this lot and the lot at 1001 South Learman Avenue. That's the large vacant lot that's just south of the gas station there. So it would be about 40 units spread across the two lots. The developers also expressed interest in incorporating amenities into the project, such as a garden or playground, depending on further community outreach. In October of this year, City Council approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Housing Authority to explore financing for the project. That agreement is included as an exhibit with the staff report. Something I want to emphasize with all of that is that while this rezoning would be one prerequisite for that proposed development or any other potential multifamily development on the site, the final site layout would still require separate subsequent approval by City Council outside of this rezoning request, because it would be happening on city-owned land and receiving city funding. Just in terms of what a potential timeline for that development might look like, the state either would or wouldn't award tax credit funding around February of next year, and we would know at that point if this particular development was going to move forward. If it does, the city and the developer would then hold more meetings to work out the site layout in more detail, and that would then go before council again before any construction could begin. Since this isn't the last level of review for that proposed development, and that one's not even sure to happen with the uncertainties of funding, tonight we want to focus more on the current and proposed zoning districts in general in terms of their suitability for the location. So the property is currently zoned B3 general business. It first received that zoning designation in 1979. As is the parcel immediately to the west. That parcel is currently the site of the Shell gas station. The parcel to the north is zoned CRE, or Conservation, Recreation, Education, and is the site of Brookins Center and some sports facilities. The parcel to the east is zoned R3, single and two-family residential, and the parcel to the south is zoned R5 and contains a multifamily development. And then the lot at 1001 South Learman, which would also be included in this most recent housing proposal, is currently zoned R5 as well. This is a map from the 2005 comprehensive plan showing the future land use designation for the area. You can see the intersection of Learman and Washington on the left, where the site has been designated with a residential future land use. And currently the residential properties in that area are a mixture of single-family duplexes and multifamily properties. So staff find that the R5 zoning proposal is compatible with that future land use designation and the existing land uses in the area. The Illinois Supreme Court lays out 8 criteria for evaluating a rezoning request. Those are explored in detail in the staff report, but I'll try to quickly summarize the main points for each criterion. The first is the existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. We've already talked about that a bit. Again, there are other R5 properties in the immediate area, as well as similar multifamily land uses. The second criterion is the extent to which property values are diminished by the restrictions of the zoning ordinance. So something we're taking into account with this is that the property has historically failed to attract business uses in line with its current B3 zoning. Like I said, the property was first designated B3 in 1979. This is an image of the zoning map from back then. And then we have some historical aerials of the lot prior to its use as a community garden, where you can see that it was primarily vacant. It looks like in 2002 it was being used for some equipment storage associated with construction at the neighboring gas station. The city has received a proposal to develop the site with multifamily housing, but if the property is not rezoned to accommodate the proposal, it could potentially remain vacant longer, which can have negative spillover effects on the surrounding area. The third criterion is the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. We find the proposed rezoning would likely have a positive effect, as it would be one step towards facilitating the development of affordable housing in the area, which the recent consolidated plan has determined there's a local shortage. The potential of inclusion of other amenities with this specific proposal could provide added benefits to the public. The fourth criterion is the relative gain to the public compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner. We find that both the current owner, the city, and the general public would likely benefit, as the city would see a property that's currently vacant rezoned to better accommodate future development proposals. And the public, again, would likely benefit from an increase in the affordable housing supply and possible other amenities. The fifth criterion is the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purpose. Again, there are other properties with the same zoning and similar land uses in the surrounding area. And again, we're also taking into consideration that its current zoning hasn't really panned out. The sixth criterion is the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned. So in its current stretch of vacancy, it's been vacant since June, but prior to its use as a community garden, which started in 2012, the property had basically always been vacant. The seventh criterion is the community need for more of the proposed use. Again, while we can't be sure that this specific affordable housing proposal will move forward, it is the city's intention for some affordable housing development to eventually be on this lot. And that's something that the consolidated plan and the recent ARC allocation plan have both found there's a shortage of in the county. And again, continued city oversight required by ownership and funding for the development would help ensure that any potential uses are in line with community needs. And the final criterion is community care for planned land use development. So again, the 2005 comprehensive plan has designated the property as part of the residential future land use. At that point, the property had already been vacant as a B3 lot for a long time. So this proposed rezoning would bring the lot more into alignment with the long-term vision for the area. So to close things out, Plan Commission has the options of either recommending approval of the rezoning request to City Council or recommending denial. This would go to the Committee of the Whole meeting on December 19th. And staff are recommending approval, taking the criteria we discussed into consideration. I can take questions for staff. Kevin Garcia, the principal planner, is also present, as is Sheila Dodd, the community development director. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wilson. Any questions for staff? Mr. Fell?
Yes. Can you briefly go over why we have this case now?
So the property is currently vacant. We have received a development proposal for the lot, although we're not certain it would move forward. If it does, doing the rezoning now would make that process go faster when we do need to get
Okay.
the wheels rolling on something
Okay,
eventually.
The city did not put out an RFP for a proposal for this lot, correct?
Sheila could answer that.
Sorry. No, we did not. We had two developers come forward who were going to apply for tax credits in this round that's open now. And so because we had two separate individuals come forward to do the development, we did not issue an RFP.
Okay. If this property is rezoned, will the city issue an RFP so any developer has an opportunity to respond to this?
I will check with our finance department and see what the process is.
If not, one of these two developers who approach the city on their own gets this project, potentially.
Correct. Yeah, if we don't have to move forward with an RFP, both of the ones that have submitted proposals, we'll move forward with them.
Can you tell me the criteria of which you would not have to proceed with an RFP?
I'll have to check with our finance department and see what they recommend.
Okay.
Yeah, since we didn't just have a sole source person, we did have more than two come forward, or the two come forward. And they're up against a tax credit application deadline. We did not seek an RFP.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? I'll ask a question. Nishu?
So right next to this subject property, they're both B3 and B5. Is there concerns from the neighborhood meeting of directly, no, R3 and R5? Is there concerns from the neighborhood meeting of this one directly going to R5 instead of R3?
So there was a question at the neighborhood meeting about why we were going to R5. I believe the question at the neighborhood meeting was why we weren't considering R4. We were taking the zoning of the lot at 1001 South Learman, which is also being, potentially developed into consideration, and that's currently zoned R5. And then the lots immediately adjacent to the south are zoned R5. So it seemed to fit in pretty well with the surrounding area. And then because the city is also going to have continued oversight of any proposed development, because we would be providing some funding and the land, we'll have a bit more say. I think something Kevin mentioned at that last meeting was that were whatever was going to happen to be permitted by right after the rezoning, maybe we would want to consider R4, but since we're going to have continued oversight anyway on things like design and density, R5 will provide more flexibility while we'll still have some oversight of things.
A follow-up. So why would the current B3 not work for the potential development?
So the B3 zoning actually would allow a multifamily use by special use permit. That's basically the same review process as a rezoning. It would go to Plan Commission and then it would go to City Council. But just taking into consideration the comp plan designation, the surrounding land uses, and the long failure for the lot to actually attract a business use, we decided a rezoning would be more in line with long-term goals for the lot.
So is it right to say that if someone wants to buy that lot, put on affordable housing unit there, in the current zoning, it is possible. However, it's just more cumbersome. So if we can do some work to rezone it to R5, make it easy for the development, that's just how this thing is presenting itself to be easier for the proposed development. But the proposed development could fit into the current zoning, just a different procedure.
That's a way of looking at it, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's
Mr. Fell?
mostly for my own curiosity. Can city council require, impose requirements above what's in the zoning ordinance or the building code? Do they just have to meet R5 and building code, or they have to exceed that if city council tells them they have to?
I mean, well, city council, excuse me. I mean, council will have a say in what goes there. I think if you look just a block north of us at 200 South Vine, city council got to weigh in on, on that development.
I don't mean weigh in. Can they, for instance, I'm making this up. I have no idea what the FAR and R5 is. If FAR is 0.4, can city council say, make it R5 just on a whim? Or do they, is adhering to the requirements of the current zoning ordinance and building code what the developer has to do? Can city council require them to exceed that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Yes, whatever goes on there would have to meet the development regulations for R5 and building code.
And city council can't
Not unless they
impose
want
stricter requirements on that.
stricter in like. I mean, more strict
again,
FAR
I'll
would
make
be.
a number up. They're required to have 40 parking spaces, and city council says, we think you should have 50. Can they do that if 40 is what's required under the zoning ordinance?
We own the lot.
Well, correct.
I mean,
That's right, but do they
yeah.
have to adhere to the zoning ordinance or not?
Yeah, I mean, you have to meet the minimum requirements, whatever it is. I mean, if the city council wanted to do something more restrictive, I mean, in the final
They
plan,
could.
I guess they could.
Okay, all right, that's,
yeah.
that was my question.
Okay.
Can I ask, just maybe this will clarify it, would the developer be entering into a development agreement with the city?
I believe that's how it would function.
Okay, because
Sheila is shaking her head, yes.
Yeah.
in which case, council could impose other things as part of that
Right.
development
Yeah,
agreement.
this is just the first step in a much longer process. So we would, we'd negotiate on both sides what we wanted.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Thanks, Mr. Olson. At this point, we will open it up to the public for comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the commission, either in favor or in opposition, or provide comment in general?
I guess I have some concerns that,
Sorry, can you just state your name first? I
Sorry, my
think,
name
do
is
we need
Eddie.
them to sign in also? Kevin?
If you could sign the that list of speakers, that would help us out. Thank you.
Thank you.
as a property owner in the area, actually the properties adjacent to the property in question here, I was wondering first who the developer would be, what those plans for that development would look like, and my other concerns are, if we look back in the later 80s to 90s, when we had more of the affordable housing in that area, it actually brought that area down, okay? And when I say we brought it down, because we had so much, the crime rate in that area went higher, which then required more city resources when it comes to police. Also, one of the areas over there now is also using, because of the affordable housing, because of the affordable housing, we are trying as property owners and landlords in that area to improve that neighborhood as much as we can and keep the crime rates down. So that would be my concern.
Thanks. Did staff want to respond at all to questions about who the developer would be and what the plan was?
Yeah, I mean, right now, so since the developer, well, as Sheila said, a couple of developers have come to us, and since we're not sure if they're going to get funding or not, we can't say who the ultimate developer is going to be, so we don't know at this time. But when there is somebody when we have a developer in hand who's going to be able to do something there, we will have more public meetings, and we can, and we can take comments at that time. If you'd like to share your contact info, if you want to let me know, we'll make sure that when we're further along in the process that when those meetings are coming up. Okay.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the commission? Yes, please come forward and state your name and sign in. Sounds like the pen doesn't work.
My name is Joanne Wagenbreath. I live at 1203 South Kinch, And we have basically the same concern this gentleman has. Our home has had 2 attempted break-ins, and it seems like the people doing the break-ins are teenagers. And I believe that probably their parents are busy working and they're not supervised. If you have more low-income housing and there are more parents who are working to make ends meet, doesn't that mean more unsupervised children? And that's our main concern. And right now, there's a Quick Shop right next to that lot. And there used to be, right next to the Quick Shop, a food mart. And there was so much criminal activity at that food mart that the police told the owner that he had to hire his own security. And shortly after that, it closed, so it's now empty. But our main concern is crime, and there seems to be, like I said, unsupervised teenagers who are committing the crimes. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission? All right, if there's no one else, then we'll declare the public input portion closed and now go into discussion and possibly entertain a motion to vote. So is there any discussion on the proposal? Ms. Yu?
I have an additional question. I might missed it, but the other piece of property, the larger piece of R5, who owns it?
We own that as well.
Okay.
I have one more question for staff too. So is it correct to say that when the city acquired this land, it was always the plan for it to be the location of affordable housing?
It is, and we didn't include it in the memo, but Sheila dug up a couple of agreements. The original purchase agreement states, and I think it's in the first paragraph, it says that the city is going to use this lot for affordable housing eventually. That was the whole purpose of us purchasing the property back in 2012. Also, the lease agreement that we had with the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee to use it for a community garden said in the first paragraph that the city would be using it for affordable housing in the future.
Okay.
So we're going to include those in the council memo.
So because it's a rezoning and we should think about what, anything that could possibly go in there once it's rezoned to R5, as long as the city owns it, the city's intention is for it to be the location for affordable housing.
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Sims?
Yes, so this is ignorance on my part, but the zoning for mixed, for it to be both residential with multi-family housing and some individual housing, right? So that doesn't, and even if it was affordable housing, right? So I'm getting clarification. There are multiple different affordable housing models, right? Like some of them are mixed income, right? Many cities are moving towards that model with lots of success. Am I correct? So the zoning doesn't turn it into one conceptualization of affordable housing. Then we would go back to a community process where we would look at what those variables would be. Is that true?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Hopkins?
So, I'm going to try to lay out where I think I am and see. The city not only intends to use this for affordable housing, it is committed in the funding source for the purchase to use it for affordable housing. Am I correct? Okay.
Yes.
So it has to be used for affordable housing unless something unrelated to zoning changes. And whatever that, I'm not sure what that could be, but that's not something for us to contend with. In the context of what Ms. Sims was talking about, do we have a definition of affordable housing that can include mixed income housing or cannot include mixed income housing?
I think I'm going to defer to the housing experts behind me.
Typically, affordable housing means that an individual doesn't pay more than 30% of their gross income on rent and utilities. And so it's really more on an individual basis. If I rent the unit and I make $1,000 a month, I'm not going to be able to spend technically more than $330. If Kevin rents it and he only brings home $100 a month, his rent is $33. So the partnership that we have on this, and this is a renewable agreement that we did with the Housing Authority, it expired in December of '21 for a different developer. We'll work with them to determine what the need is and the best way to utilize it, the property. So it may be a mixed income, it may be all affordable units with vouchers attached to it. At this point, we don't know. I will tell you, though, that we have been assured by the Housing Authority as well as us that we will definitely go out to the public. We'll bring, when we have a final plan or, preliminary final plan, we'll take it to the public, get their input, find out what their neighborhood is before anything is finalized or even brought to City Council. City Council is going to want to see that the neighborhood has had an opportunity to look into this. So affordable housing is a lot of different things, but typically that's it.
Yeah, okay. My question was the mixed income possibility, so that's at least a possibility.
It could be.
So, I think that we should send this to the council with a recommendation for approval. I'll make a motion in a minute. And my reasoning is that given the constraints and the useful constraints, but also the narrowing constraints of what can be done with it because the city owns it, I think R5 is the better zoning than B3, and we ought to do it anyway. And one of the reasons is that the signal sent to the public and anyone else who actually follows the zoning or planning is we don't really want business on that corner for reasons related to some of the other businesses that have been nearby. And we are going to have housing. And the other lots immediately to the south seems to be more importantly than the one across the street. Our R5, the main difference between R3, R4, R5 I can see is in the FAR, floor area ratio. We've had discussions in other neighborhoods in town about floor area ratio not being that good a way to think about the form of development. And so I think R5 is the right zoning. And then embedded in doing this, in our message to the city council, is that the discussion that's been had here and the input about the apparent concentration of affordable housing in a particular neighborhood means that the city needs to think about what the nature of this affordable housing is, mixed income being at least a way to think about broader options, and second, to commit the other city resources to the neighborhood in terms of crime, things like the Park District building a new facility down the street. These are things that we need to be pointing out and emphasizing and committing to if we're going to do this as a city. So given that, I would send, let's see, planning case 2464 M22 to the city council with a recommendation of approval.
So we have a motion by Mr. Hopkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sims. Any discussion? Further discussion? Mr. Fell?
One point of discussion. I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I do want to say I am at least mildly uncomfortable of the seemingly non-transparent way that this zoning request has come to the Plan Commission. I trust that our city administration will handle it appropriately, but not opening this up to any developer with an RFP to me doesn't sit very well. So that was it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Fell. I'll just say in terms of what I'm thinking, I agree with the logic that Mr. Hopkins has laid out. I think the fact that this is shown as residential in the future land use map and the comprehensive plan supports rezoning this to residential, and R5 seems to make sense in terms of the surrounding context. And in terms of the location for more housing and more dense housing, the surrounding services and planned services would seem to support that. Ms. Yu?
I want to make a comment that technically this case straightforward, it's fine. But emotionally, I really echo some of the neighbors who speaks up here. It's a big change when you tell them, hey, there's going to be 100 unit built right next to your house, without a little bit more background of what that potentially could look like, what kind of impact it is going to bring to that neighborhood. It's just a lot of information for them to process. And I trust our process. This is just like the first step of making a better community. There are future steps where all the neighborhood can be involved and can provide you feedback and even can speak up in the city council if you just really think this is not a good idea. So all those venues are open, and this is just going to be a long process, like a lot of you said. So let's get more community buy-in. Let's just make it right, because it's a big development. It's a big impact to the community.
Thanks, Ms. Yu. Any other discussion?
I just want to add that I want to echo Ms. Yu's comment that I would anticipate that this is a iterative process with lots of conversations, from design to structure to thinking. I mean, I'm hoping at some period of time there will be a chance for us to look at, hypothetically, maybe plans around layout or geography or changes in sidewalks or any of those things, which all need to be changed and modified to make this work. So if this is the first step that starts a community process, it could be pretty exciting, but I just want people to know that you're going to have to stay involved in the journey, and this is one step in a process that can be shaped and defined, and consider your voices.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Any other discussion? Ready to vote? Can we have a roll call, please?
Andrew Fell,
Yes.
Lou Hopkins,
Yes.
Deborah McFarland,
Yes.
Karen Sims,
Yes.
Chen-Shi Yu,
Yes.
and Dustin Allred.
Yes. So that motion passes. And can you repeat the date that will go to council?
Yes, that'll go to Committee of the Whole on December 19th
Okay,
in this room at 7 o'clock.
thanks. All right. I don't see that we have any new business, audience participation. Is there anyone that wants a second chance to address the commission for any topic? Seeing as there's no takers, do we have staff report?
There is no staff report.
Do we have any updates on previous business? It's been a while since we've actually,
It has been a while. I think
Yeah.
last time we got together, we just talked about the comprehensive plan.
yeah.
So I would have updated you at that time.
Okay.
So I think we're good.
No study session. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Adjourned at 7:43.